So the curator of VBS Mutual Bank has succeeded in getting the assets of executives and board members of VBS Mutual Bank frozen as the curatorship process continues. A 1.5 billion rand hole, a chasm, needs to be filled before the bank can begin to pull itself back to operating normally again. Can VBS be saved? I don't think it can. Can it be saved?
Well, that's the efforts that we are running through now. So the bank remains opened to focus on recoveries. So clients that owe the money, clearly the contractual obligations still exist and they need to pay in.
Okay, and I know you can't talk about individual clients. Okay,
Yes.
So I'm going to create a hypothetical situation for you. Let's say hypothetically, I was a private citizen and I had the state build a house for me on trust land that I didn't own. And I went around to all the banks and nobody would give me a loan because a public protector hypothetically had said I need to pay for some of the upgrades to my house. This is still in hypothetical sort of land, you understand. And I was given by VBS an 8 million rand loan, and I was servicing that loan. I assume that I continued servicing it. Then I lost my job. How does VBS get the 8 million rand loan back?
So we have to go back to the onset of when the credit decision was made in your hypothetical scenario. Clearly when banks advance money, it's based on a set of predetermined risk and lending criteria in order to assess.
Did you, in this hypothetical situation, go through a proper risk assessment on me?
Well, if I was the person making the decision, that's the process I would follow to make sure that you're a good enough creditor.
But VBS's track record up until now suggests when Jacob Zuma, let's stop beating about the bush, went and asked for a loan, they were getting up to all kinds of malfeasance and skullduggery, favourite words of mine. Did they go through a proper process when they lent Jacob Zuma the money?
So right now, it's improper for me to comment on specific clients.
Okay, let's go back to the hypothetical then.
But the principle is that clients that owe the bank money needs to make good on that. If there are defaults, we would follow our due process in terms of the National Credit Act and relevant laws and regulations in order to follow a process to collect on those monies, especially now seeing that the bank is short on cash. It's a process that we will follow like any other client that owes the money.
But you see, the problem here is if I had no title deed on this property, you can't repossess the property because I don't actually own it. And that becomes a problem, doesn't it? Because there is no title deed. The title deed is owned by, hypothetically, an Ingonyama Trust, for example.
Sure.
How do you then claim against an individual, a private citizen who no longer is has full-time employment, who then doesn't have the title deeds to the property?
So the next step is to look at suretyships. Has anyone signed a suretyship? Has the individual himself signed a surety? And we would then have to follow the legal course.
But all my best friends are no longer on the WhatsApp group, and they're no longer, they might not be in the country anymore.
So like any bank, one way to follow a recovery process. If at the end of the day it's a dead horse, then the bank has to take the loss, unfortunately.
Okay,
so it's exactly the process.
You may very well end up having to take a loss on Jacob Zuma's 8 million rand loan, hypothetically speaking.
Hypothetically, well, I'll reserve comment.
But here's the point. One can't regulate against fraud. One can't govern against fraud. Not dissimilar to the Steinhoff case, and we've seen Marcus Jooste recently in Parliament giving testimony saying, I didn't know there were any accounting issues within the group, and there very clearly are accounting problems within Steinhoff. The regulators could do only so much so far, and then you have to depend on the integrity of management. And from what you've told us, the management team that you are now pursuing, former management team, didn't have the required integrity.
Absolutely, and that's a key principle for a bank to function. It needs people of integrity. It needs people of competence. I mean, it has competence level, but integrity and trust is critical in those individuals. And I suppose and I'm speaking generically now, if the lure of money becomes so great that even the best of people are too tempted by the easy access to the money. And I think sometimes if you look at psychological behavior, people they go on a high because they can do it. They've done it once, and they continue doing it. So I'm not a psychologist, but that these are things that
you've seen enough crooks as an accountant in your time.
I believe I have. I have seen more than my fair share.
Can this phoenix rise from the ashes? What is your assessment of it? There's a hole. You've got a book of assets. You've got a book of liabilities. Can you match those? Is there life in the old dog yet?
So that's what we're working feverishly on, to restate the financial statements, focus on recoveries, the civil action to get money in. Those were all great successes. And then also taking care of the depositors was great because, it's not taking away curatorship time to focus on depositors. We're now focusing on the core of the bank, and that's recoveries. Also, making the bank fit for purpose, rationalizing it to the extent that it can afford to be a bank. That's the processes that we are busy with at the moment.
And the political noise, when this first broke and the fact that the curatorship first happened, we had politicians from all sides of the political spectrum accusing the Reserve Bank of maliciously targeting this small bank that was simply trying to do the job that big banks weren't willing to do, and this was a black-owned bank, and it was unfair targeting. Has that noise died down?
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on the political rhetoric that's out there.
But okay, do you feel under less political pressure now as curator than you did 6 months ago?
I think it's certainly, it has certainly been well received where the legal challenge has stopped on the curatorship process itself. So that has certainly helped.
So the evidence that you've gathered then would mitigate against some of the worst excesses of the public pressure that you faced?
Yeah, I think, and the good thing about being a curator is that I focus on exactly what the business can do and where its trigger points, where its pressure points are, and what it can and cannot do in terms of its business model, in terms of the money, and in terms of the numbers. The numbers need to speak for themselves.
How long will it take you to draw a line under this, to say either we can make this, keep this as a going concern, or it's dead and we have to simply write off X 100 million or billion of losses?
Bruce, two things. So the first thing is the investigation process. The investigator's report is expected sometime soon, so that's the first trigger for me. And then secondly, restating the financial statements. I think with those two in hand, I would be in a more comfortable, or in a position to comfortably say that this should be the next steps. And what we would do as curator is propose those steps or actions to the Reserve Bank.
By Christmas, or does it go past the first anniversary of your appointment as curator?
At this point in time, difficult to say. Like I said, it's so widespread. It's really permeated throughout the organization, and we're working through many challenges. This has been a very difficult curatorship. But yeah, we're confident that we can, well, hopefully get through all of this as quickly as possible.
Anoosh, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having
Anoosh Rooplal is the curator of VBS Mutual Bank. That's where we leave it for this week. You can send us your feedback via Twitter, the handle for that @ENCA, or directly to me @Bruce Business using the hashtag ENCA Taking Stock. Until next time, bye-bye.